quite loud.
Alright, ready?
Yeah.
So, Zach Butcher, Games Development Level 3. My question that I've been working on for the past weeks is can we consider esports sports by the traditional sense? So there's been like a topic that's been like around for years now about is an esport considered the same, I guess, value as a sport, and it's come to me as a question based off of how recently the scene's been growing. It's been like year after year, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So well, I wanted to do something esports related as a topic, and I thought, well, there's like a big grey area between like obviously like sports like darts as well and chess. People are like, are they sports, are they not sports? And esports kind of fits in that area. And I thought the best thing to focus on is why that is. So why is it being considered, like, why do people not consider it? Is it because of like the physical side, the lack of physical side, or is it because of X reason? From the tasks that I've done, I've got a series of mini questions for each experimentation. I did 3 experimentations. So the first one is I wanted to get like the public's view. So like I drafted a survey in which I wanted to get the overall view of what people see of it currently, like before pushing to see if they can tell the difference. I wanted to know what they currently thought. And the second one was like, given audio clips alone, given no video, can they recognise the difference between a normal sport, like a traditional sport, or an e-sport, just based off sort of like presentation, like sort of the quality, the professionalism. So obviously with something like football, it has like its unique commentary and like I guess terminology for that sport. I wanted to see if people could tell the difference between like sort of football and like the esports equivalent sort of thing. And the third one was what features like make up between a sport and e-sport. So for things like sport, I'd have like it's physically demanding. For esports, I'd say it's more mentally demanding, and I'd say in between you'd need to have like skills, training, like all this sort of thing. But I think it's more like so yeah, my who am I? This is where it comes from. It comes from my who am I. I had a look at like my experiences, my passions, and like it's something that I already love. I love watching esports. I like researching it. I listen to podcasts and stuff on it. So it kind of just seemed, after creating this for my task, it kind of just seemed obvious, this is what I should do. And from then on, it kind of become more about like, what section of it, because it's like it's a big broad topic, it's like what section do I really want to cover the most, and that's why I've gone for sort of public view and why there's a grey area around it. Yeah, that's basically it. I looked at my dream job, and sort of my dream job would be like an esports analyst. So just being able to talk about esports sort of thing, being able to break down games and stuff from particular esports, why a team's performing well, why they're not performing well, that sort of thing. So yeah, this leading on to my literature review, I have a lot of different information in my literature review. I've gone for things like sponsors that have joined esports, like things that not necessarily straight away informed my first experiment, but from doing this research I was able to form some from my first experiment. So there's information about like Disney joining up with Team Liquid. They bought a share in Team Liquid, who are a big esports team. Then there's information that I've used to create an experiment, which is like in a Vice documentary about like celebrity millionaires. They said that the guy asked the question to like the world champions at the time, like of League of Legends. They said, "Do you consider yourself athletes?" And the first guy said no, but he didn't really justify a reason. But the other guys kind of said, "Yeah, we do consider ourselves athletes." So it kind of made me think that I can use that question and ask it to everyone else, like, so like, what would be your opinion on this sort of thing? Do you consider them athletes, and maybe why? That's what I used in my first experiment as well. It helped me as well with the NALCS franchising system that's in place, which is like building a league to sustain esports in. So League of Legends currently has been around for 9 years, I think it is. And the esports scene this year, they've created a league which is all the teams have bought into it. So they're getting rid of relegations, because there was a team that was called Origin, and they was in the league for 1 year. They was like the 4th best team in the world, and the next year, because they performed so bad, they actually lost their organisation, which is kind of worrying, because that's not really a sustainable business. So this year they've made it so there's like things that you would see in football. There's like there's agents that will talk for players' contracts to try and sort of bargain to get like the deal for them. They'll be like represented in a way. That's the best way to say it. There's like going to be a players players tribune sort of thing, where they all come together to make this like this players association, that's the word, where they are able to speak up and have their own opinion, and the players' value matters as much as the team's value, as much as the owners of the game. So it's all becoming like this big thing where sponsors can come in and it can just take up, it can just grow from there. So that's one of my opinions. So yeah, right, experiment 1 is for Valeria actually.
Right. Let's project it, it's fine.
So yeah, for my experiment 1, like I said already, that I made a survey that I posted out. These are just some of the questions. So like, everyone I asked said they knew of esports, and I also asked a question which was, do you play traditional sports? Because I was thinking more along the lines of, if you know of esports, maybe there's a difference between just sports fans and esports fans, and maybe they don't cross over, maybe they don't mix, or maybe they do. That's what I want to find out. And I got kind of like a mixed result on that, mostly no, but I did get quite a few yeses as well. And I asked a question which was like, can you identify a reason for and against it being considered a sport? Because I thought, whatever side of the fence you're on, if you're a sports fan and you're whole heart for a sports fan, you should be able to provide a reason to why maybe it could be considered a sport, as well as why it isn't. So you sort of kind of look both sides of the argument. One of the questions that I drew attention to at the start of the PowerPoint was like, do you consider pro players athletes? And a lot of people was saying sort of like no, and their reasons were like, they're just not physical. Their definition of athlete is someone that's muscular and, you know, can run, all these physical traits. But then there was a couple of answers that kind of like didn't necessarily say no, but they said something like this reply says like they do consider them athletes by a traditional sense, because by a definition that they've come up with, I don't know if it's says they need a visa to travel. So that's what an athlete needs, because of work visa. But this is a bit that it says they believe there should be a separate term for them. So sort of they are athletes, but they're their own sort of athletes. They're not necessarily physical athletes as much as I guess mental athletes would be the best way. I asked different types of questions. I asked qualitative and quantitative questions, because I wanted the quantitative questions to give me sort of more percentage-based answers. So like, 60% of people said this, or 90% of people said this, as well as the qualitative questions, which was like, I need to know why do you think maybe that they are athletes? This is why I got this good reply down here. The question I actually wish I added in though was, which to link into the do you play traditional sports, I wish I linked in do you play games, because it would have been interesting to see maybe the split of people that did play games as opposed to sports, or maybe played both or less. So. yeah, and the goal of this was to try and find out how do we accept esports as it is currently. Experience, so yeah, this is a really interesting one because I did, in total I showed 8 clips, 30 seconds to, well I didn't show, I listened, made people listen to them, just to see if they can get their opinion. The first 4 were kind of like really similar. So this one here is Formula 1, the actual sport Formula 1. This is Formula 1 esports. And what I did was play, obviously, 30-second clip of these. And in this format here, I asked, do you think, kind of in like a true or false format, I said, do you think this is an esport or a sport? And people would be like, oh, I think this is an esport, I think this is a sport. And I actually feel that question, them 4 questions, the first 4 clips, were successful, but not for the reason I want them to be, because I wanted honest answers, but my sort of opinion as the experiment concluded, like continued going actually, was I feel that maybe people were guessing more for a game than they were guessing if they was like, that's what they thought. So a lot of people said sport, 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 and then they were like, this can't be right, you know, I'm 3 in, none of them have been e-sport right now. So the reason it was successful is because it helped me show that there actually is a very slim difference between the way they're presented from game standpoint to, from e-sport standpoint to traditional sports standpoint. So not necessarily what I was hoping for. I was hoping for honest answers, but the ones that were honest were the better ones because obviously I got both answers. But yeah, I feel it's still a successful though. Yeah, the second half I wanted more context, so I asked more detailed questions like, can you tell what the event is this is for? So like I had a handball water polo match, and not many people could tell what that was. Well, they mostly thought it was just either swimming or I had someone say something like basketball. They could hear boots running on the floor or something.
It's the thud, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Yeah. And then I asked them questions like, did they find this clip like exciting? Was it thrilling? Or most of them said it was like, especially the swimming one. They said it was like a bit boring. The commentators didn't seem into it or enthusiastic. Then obviously I did the same with game clips as well. And some people were like, oh, I didn't know what was going on, but this sounded a lot more. But commentators sounded more into it. It sounded, it had a lot more of an excitement feel, and I asked a bunch of things like, I had final thoughts at the end actually. Final thoughts at the end was, I didn't say they have to say anything, I said you can say something for your final thoughts on anything you want, you don't even have to say anything, because I wanted to see maybe what people thought. And a lot of people said it was just an interesting experiment and that they didn't actually know the difference, they couldn't tell the difference sort of thing from how close some of the clips were. Actually, to mention, the 4 clips after the first 4 were a lot more easier to tell. These clips weren't out to see, are they e-sport or are they sport? These were just clips from different e-sports and different sports. But yeah, I think that's and yeah, experiment 3 was about like identifying, like I said earlier as well, what goes into like an e-sport. So like it has to be like electronic to be an e-sport. Obviously it has to be mentally demanding. For sports it has to be physically demanding, and I put Olympics here because e-sports isn't in the Olympics. There is talks of that happening as well, which is why I put that in there.
Do they have their own kind of Olympics? They're like, obviously they're competitions.
That's the thing. They have that. They have world championship sort of stuff. So it'd be kind of like how football has the World Cup, like League of Legends has their own World Cup sort of thing, and Overwatch has their own World Cup sort of thing. And then I've listed so much in the middle that kind of crosses over. So like they both have to have rules obviously in place. That's standard stuff. Like they both require equipment. It's different equipment obviously, but it's still equipment. But yeah, the things are like they have to be training. There has to be training. There has to be competitive. People can practice at it. And I thought, well, by this sense, like,
what makes an esport from a game. Because obviously if you've got a game, why can it not be an esport? And I put things like, it has to be, like, I listed all the stuff I've got in the middle I listed on the esport side. And then for a game I put things like, it can't be an esport really if it's just necessarily solo play, or if it's got a lot of RNG in it, like, which is like random in-game deciding things. It's like if you used to roll a dice, the outcome would be this. You can't really base an esport off of that so much so, because obviously then it's just unfair, it's just on chance, it's not on skill. So it has to be kind of a balance between RNG and skill. I said, yeah, it can't be as well an esport if it's got more than one type of game mode. So like something like GTA, if you think of GTA Online, it's like there's so many different things that you can do that not necessarily you can make an esport out of it, because you can do your own races, you can do shooting. There's not actually an overall goal in the online play that you don't decide yourself. Using both of these Venn diagrams here, I constructed like a flow chart, and I was like, so the flow chart goes from like, is the game heavily RNG based, or is it strategy and skill? And then obviously it flows down to like, it can be or cannot be an esport, and if it cannot be, then it goes back up to the beginning to say like, you know, pick a different game basically. I then compared it to some games that were currently esports, and it follows down. So if you say like League of Legends, it's like, it's got RNG, but it's also just like strategy and skill based, not RNG based, so it goes down. And then is the game competitive? So it's like, yes, the game is. And can the game be intense from an audience point of view? This is like key, because if it's not entertaining to watch, even if a sport's not entertaining to watch, you don't necessarily watch it, do you? Like this can't hold an audience. So then it move on, and so does the game have a wide player base? Now, like this is kind of like a factor that's obviously player base can grow, and it grows off of esports as well, so it kind of bounces between the two. If it already has a wide player base, it's more likely to become something like a franchised esport. So like League of Legends has a wide player base, and now it's franchised. So then yeah, it leads down to it, like, oh, it can be an esport. So games that I did look at, like this game, I'll give you an example. It was Disc Jam, which is like something that's not necessarily heard of at the moment, but it's kind of like a 2-on-2, it's like tennis stroke hockey. And from comparing it to my flowchart, it can technically be an esport. Like it's not there yet, because I think that people haven't invested into it. It hasn't actually got as wide of a player base as it needs to have at the moment, but it's getting there maybe. So that can be an esport. But looking at something like, I looked at a game in Town Salem, which is a game I've been playing recently, which is really RNG based games. You get a random roll, and you kind of just have to make it work. You have to lie to people. Can't necessarily be an esport because it's maybe not intense from an audience point of view, or it also doesn't maybe have the wider player base. And I mean, the game is competitive, but it's only competitive from a solo point stand. So there's like 3 or 4 different types of esports, I guess, teams. So you've got like team individual, team squad, and individual. And it kind of would meet like solo, so it wouldn't really count. That's my. And then I just put like a little thing in there. It was like, so yeah, I know what I would do to improve the tasks. Like for my first task, I would ask about do they play sports? Do they play games? Sorry, not sports. Yeah, and I said this, it's informed me like of what I want to do for my Unit 13, which is maybe to my so create content for a sport, an esport that's not there, but like promotional material. So maybe like say,
right.
Yeah. So I guess that's it. Just create promotional material for something.
Good.
So
Okay.
that's my
Lovely. Really, really informative. That was incredibly informative.
It's quite interesting because your project is more sort of marketing research based,
theoretical.
which is theoretical
Yeah.
in comparison to lots of traditional skill,
People
like
have done
the
games
program
and,
based.
like,
Yeah.
pictures
So
and
you've got
things.
it's worked really well because you've got like this big scope of what you can look into, but actually, you know, this has all been really good preparation for what if you do go on to do the production.
Yeah.
It's really
I
clever.
think it's been really sort of cleverly designed, because I know you were sort of quite anxious about it at first, about what you were going to do. And with the parameters of that, I think, firstly, you know, you've used one of your greatest tools, which is communication for you. You know, you're good at talking to people, you're good at discussion, you're good at peer groups and observation, giving feedback, and that is particularly like a very, very prominent skill of yours, which you've utilised really well. And I think, you know, you've been reflective with every single bit of experimentation you've done. And you've also, everything you've done, you've been honest and kind of reflective in that what you could have done better. You know, perhaps, you know, your questioning was really good, but, you know, there's the fact that you could have said, I should have asked them about video games. I should have asked them specifically that. And, you know, that's the kind of thing. You understand questioning, and you understand, you know, how to ask questions properly and not to ask sort of questions, leading questions that imply something else. Perhaps, so you're very sort of good with that, and I think that's a really, really valid skill that you've picked up. These aren't really things, I mean, I've got a few things. One thing you said about mentally demanding sports can be physically demanding. Do you think that mentally demanding sports can be physically demanding?
Yeah, because I do, because from a certain, I guess rugby would be an example. In rugby, there's like plays that you can kind of call before, and these plays would be like already thought up about, like, so you'd think about your position and you'd think like, okay, I know what this is going to do, obviously I need to be in this position. And if you look at something like a rugby breakdown show or like an analysis, they go really in depth into like what the player needed
Strategy,
to do.
yeah.
And so I feel like, yeah, maybe more so from a I guess an analytic approach would be like where the mentally demand side comes in. But I think, yeah, in actual sports you do still need to be on
I think
point.
you do. I mean, anything you do mentally, it does tire you out physically. And, you know, you've got something like snooker, for example. It's not exactly, or darts, it's not exactly the most physically demanding
but
of
yeah, you need
sports,
to plan that.
but
Yeah.
it still is tiring,
Yeah, I
and you still have to be, to some extent, in good physical form to be able to do that, because you've got to be healthy.
Yeah.
Well, darts, but you've got to be sort of quite physically healthy in order to sort of do this. You know, and so that your attention span, so you're not tired. So I think that's quite interesting. Have you incorporated your own experiences into this
So
of esports? Because I know you did a tournament, didn't you, last
I
year? where you played.
haven't put anything about like not my background into this.
I think you should.
Because where should I put this sort of thing? Because
You
it's not
could
really
put that
mixed.
within
Yeah,
your-
you could put it within Who Am I,
Who am I?
but you could also, perhaps more for Unit 13, use that. But I think it would be useful here as well, because
Yeah. Yeah. The other one is, we spoke a lot about subcultures, didn't we, before?
Yeah.
Did you look into that? a
Yeah,
bit more?
yeah. So we spoke about this when.
This was me and Adam, wasn't it?
Yeah, I remember the conversation. I just can't remember the point in the experiments and shit.
This was all to do with like your research initially, wasn't it? Because I
Yeah.
think this was the first questionnaire you were kind of thinking
Yeah,
of.
we
and-
spoke. Yeah, because we spoke about. Yeah, I can't remember what.
Have you looked at that within your literature review?
I've got. I can't remember what I've got on there.
I think that's something that you should address. And these
Yeah.
are all really suggestions that I've got now.
That's
So
fair enough. Yeah.
another suggestion would be for your literature review is actually looking at the structure of an esports team. So actually having like, you know how when you have like a hierarchy of staff and who's in what,
Okay. Yeah.
maybe like you've done with that flowchart, is
Yeah.
have something like that, and you can
Drill
explain
down.
the breakdown
That's
of who is in charge,
quite
because it's a business template and it's a
Mm.
business plan. It's exactly like if you were to look at the college and you look at the principal at the top and all the
Yeah.
people, like a tree if you like, and it's a really important part of this because you're looking at branding, you're looking at
It also
business
does
side of
link
it.
in because esports teams, like mainly League of Legends currently, they take traditional sports coaches.
Mhm.
So I don't necessarily know, like, if they take them directly from the sport, but I know that they've got they have sports psychologists and like
Yeah.
coaches that are actually in teams.
You
And
should
then
do that.
Even above that, but obviously you've got company managers, but they're going to be, I'm pretty sure, because of how big it's getting, they're probably going to be under conglomerates, you know, like Pepsi have investment in Miramax and things like that.
Mhm.
There'll be an overarching structure even above that
Yeah.
that will
Yeah.
sort of inform sponsorship deals, all those sort of
Absolutely,
things.
things like, you know, EA, for example,
Yeah.
they're going to be under a certain umbrella, and who influences that, what, you know, the sponsorship you
It's
get,
kind of like
etc.
the whole, when I said about the team with the Disney deal, it's like they bought a share in it, so like the owner's called Steve, I can't actually say his last name, it's like Harkinet or something. He now obviously, he owns the team, but obviously he shares that team now with members from Disney.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I think what
it's
you need to do
interesting.
with that then is have a structure on the esports team, and then but actually do a case study on one
Mm,
if you haven't
yeah.
already. So find one and talk
one
about
specific team.
one specific team within your
Okay.
literature review. Yeah, and discuss that and analyse it.
Definitely.
Okay. And then the other thing I was just going to say, but I think you may have already talked about this before, researching games like chess or poker and
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
you know, quiz shows and
Yeah,
stuff
I
like
had a look into
Mastermind,
that,
you know.
yeah.
you know.
Things like darts where people are debating if it's a sport and stuff. That's how I come up with the grey area
Good.
idea.
Okay.
With your, you've done really, really well in sort of analysing the results you got from your surveys and sort of reflecting on them, but did you have in your survey, I remember I took it but I can't remember if it was in there, your age, gender?
Yes.
Okay, so have you got a
yeah,
drill
I
down of
said
that?
about that, yeah. I don't, maybe I didn't put it on there.
That's all right. You
No, as long as it's in there, because
No, yeah.
obviously the majority of people would have been people from this
Yeah.
room, so you've got to think, is that biasing my
Yeah,
results?
I did actually comment on that.
Good.
In my, this was my experiment one, I said that sort of the rough age group, and I said that, like, so I used it's like predominantly like a male audience that I got from my feedback,
Mhm.
but the reason I put in my survey like gender and that's because I wanted to know like obviously both.
Do you have that drill down for esports in general, as in what their audience type is?
Yes.
Because that would be useful to.
Well, not specific the whole of it, but there's a league which was, I think it's E-League, I think it was. I searched up the viewership stats and it was something like 85% male,
Mhm.
so 15%.
Good.
And then I commented kind of using that stat to my survey responses to say it's kind of actually similar. Like I got sort of like 90% I think were male, sort of 10% female. So kind of.
I think this is going to be a really exciting project,
Mhm.
and I think one of the things that you need to sort of delve into a bit more with this is looking at subculture, same sort of things what Kelly's looking at, in
Mhm.
fact, tribes, you know, status, rivalries, that kind of thing, and talk to Kelly about it because we spoke to her too about this kind of thing because she's designing, you know, graphics for games, you know, enemies, both or better teams, whatever. So I think that's something really important to look at. Okay.
There's also, just another thing, a BBC Three documentary that I watched probably about a year ago, all about esports, in particular esports teams, so you might want to look that up. I know it's very
What
vague.
one is that? Do you know?
I don't
Because
know.
it might
Just
be
go
the
onto
biased
BBC
one.
I
But go
can
on,
look
yeah,
at
it'll
esports.
possibly on iPlayer for BBC Three type in
Yeah.
esports because it's quite a good resource.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.